I'm pretty confident that in this video I can help you generate some more speed without any more effort. In fact, it'll probably feel easier and you'll be able to get more speed in the club head. So how do we do that? Well, it's all to do with how fast certain things move in the golf swing. So let's say, well, I've got a 7-iron here. I hit my 7-iron in the region of 180, 185 yards, 190 if I'm really going after it. So if I said to you, how fast do you think my hands are traveling in the downswing? What's the fastest that they ever get to? Have a guess. In fact, why not drop down to the comments box and just type an answer and then come back to this video. Now I can actually tell you, because I've got the blast sensor in my club that throws up so much data, I can just chuck it into the grip on any of the clubs and it throws some data. I've got my phone in my pocket. So I'm just going to hit my 7-iron and it's going to give us the club speed, but it's also going to tell us the hand speed, so how fast are my hands traveling. So let's go ahead and hit this one. I've got this ball teed up just because it's relatively early in the morning and I don't want to miss hit it. So just go and hit a pretty standard 7-iron. Pretty good. So my club head speed was 90 miles an hour. That's pretty normal, that's where I'd expect to be. My hands, 23.5 miles an hour. So significantly slower. Now, I don't know what you guessed when you dropped down to the comments box, but there's a very good chance that many of you will have guessed a much higher number. We expect those hands to be traveling much faster through the downswing. The reality is they're not. So how can I get my hands traveling at 23-ish mile an hour and this traveling at 90? Well, my left arm, and therefore kind of my hand, doesn't actually have to have any speed for me to put some movement in the club head. You can see that I can move the club head around my body a little bit, but I don't actually need much speed in the hands. So many of you will not have enough difference between how fast the hands are traveling and how fast the club head is traveling. Imagine what my club head speed would be like if this was me through impact, where the club, my arm and the hand are all traveling at the same speed. They'd all have a pretty similar miles an hour, wouldn't they? You know, my hands would have a speed and that would be quite similar to the club head. So have a look at your swing. Look at it from face on, take your video, slow it down. There's a very good chance you'll see, through impact, you'll see things like this as we go through, where the lead elbow starts to separate from the side, the elbow starts to point up towards the sky. If I open up my palm, it sort of faces me, and the club head stays kind of, we could call that behind the arm. We get this kind of chicken winging look. So if I was to swing through and do that, how much speed has the club head got relative to my hand? Probably quite similar. It's probably quite similar. So if I was to do that, I might be able to achieve 23, 24 mile an hour speed in my hand, but I'm not going to get 90 in the club head because the club head is not releasing. Just watch what happens to the club head when I go from a bending arm, which would be this, to a folding arm. So I'm just going to simply fold my arm. Watch what happens to the club head. It's traveled another 4 feet. So if that was my goal swing, if I was releasing the club through this way, achieving 23 miles an hour speed here, but actually letting the club head release because of what my lead arm is doing, suddenly I'm going to be tapping into speed that I didn't have before. And it doesn't feel like I'm swinging any faster because my hands aren't traveling any faster. It's just how the energy is going from my hands and my body through out into the club. So take a look at your swing. I'd almost guarantee that there'll be lots of you who will have this kind of look through impact. At this point in the golf swing, my lead arm would be very different and my club would be very different. My club has traveled much further. Now, if we travel a greater distance in the same space of time, it's got to be moving faster. That's fact. We can't get away from that. So how do we actually train this? Well, we're going to do a little exercise and we're going to use the blast in a moment to get some more data. But I just want you to basically just stand up. You don't have to be in golf posture, feet far, and just start to put your hand on your bicep of your lead arm. And all I want you to try and do is start making some little movements of the club back and through. Okay, and you can start to see here, I'm just creating this little rhythm. You'll almost notice that my feet are sort of playing a part in that. There's a little bit of shifting pressure. And I'm just starting to let that club work upwards as it goes through and as it goes back. The key thing is, on the way through, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep the upper arm relatively close to my body. When I get to this point here, I'm looking for the elbow to be pointing at the ground, not the sky. And I'm looking for the grip end of the club to be pointing pretty quickly down towards where the golf ball would be. That's obviously quite different. You can see elbow up to the sky and the grip points sort of upwards as well. So this would be my starting exercise. And I just want to feel like my lead arm is starting to fold. This is the key movement for you, to be able to transfer the energy from your hands into the club. And when I'm doing this, I'm not really concerned with speed. I'm just looking to see, can I get the club head to travel basically a much greater distance than my hands are traveling? And even at this speed, the club head is going to have a lot more speed relative to my hand. Now, what you'll notice on the way through is this arm is bending. There is a bend in it, but it's a fold with bend. This is a bend. This is a bend with fold. Two movements. The fold is key because that's what sits the elbow down and gets the club head to go on a greater distance. Bend on its own is not enough. So let's get my phone back out. So I've got that blast sensor in there. So I'm just going to see if I can start to create a bigger difference between my hand speed and the club head speed. Now obviously this is not going to be anywhere near full speed, but as I'm doing this, you should start to see, yeah, there we go. So you can see the hand speed relatively low, but I'm able to get the club head speed up near that kind of 60 mark. And there's a huge difference between how fast my hands are traveling and how fast my club is traveling. Now I appreciate 60 mile an hour isn't a great amount of speed, but just one hand on half a swing, I would say that's pretty good. So for me to generate, give or take 60 miles an hour of speed, I required 12 to 30 mile an hour hand speed. How much effort is that going to feel, moving your hands at 12 miles an hour? It's not, it's really not. But so many golfers who have a low club head speed are trying to increase the speed of the hands. They're trying to swing the arms faster. They're trying to move the body faster. You don't need to. You may well be generating enough speed in your body and your hands, but if you're not transferring it out into the club head, it's never going to give you the speed you require. The other thing which is really important here, and this is kind of almost like a bonus if you like, is if we demonstrate this paw movement, have a look at the club face. What does that club face do through the ball? Well, it doesn't do a lot. It kind of stays pointing down towards my target. As soon as I start to let that arm fold, the club face starts to rotate over. So those of you who are separating that arm, you're probably reducing the speed that you can achieve, and you're probably going to be spending a lot of time missing greens right and missing fairways in the trees on the right because the club face isn't rotating over naturally. Now, if you're confident enough, you're brave enough, get the ball teed up, set yourself up behind it, hold that arm, and just start to clip some shots where, yes, we're not looking for great speed, but we're looking to get that sensation of the club head moving a much greater distance than the arm, and the arm starting to sit and fold down. Really not a great distance, but there's my end position. That's what we're trying to create. And I would almost guarantee you that when you do this, it will feel freer. It will feel as if the club head has got a swing to it. You're not trying to sort of, muscle the club through, and you're not trying to, force it through. You're letting it swing naturally. That's what we want. So how do you tap into more speed with less effort? Well, you increase or you widen the gap between how fast your hands are traveling and how fast the club head is traveling. How do you do that? You focus on your lead arm and what that's doing. Now, when I was doing those little exercises, I was here, okay? When I hit a shot at full speed, my arm will not be here. The force will mean that my arm will be more out here, but it's in the same sort of position in terms of its fold and rotation. It's just being pulled a little bit straighter, and the club head will probably be a little bit further away from me here just because of that extension. It's the same thing. It's just that there's more speed involved and more force involved. So let's go ahead, see if we can finish with a decent one. 7-iron, let's see if we're going to do the same thing. 20 odd mile an hour hand speed, 90 odd club head speed.